Test. Okay, now I think we're ready. Everyone can hear me? Okay. Well, good evening, Lebanon City residents and guests. As the mayor of Lebanon City, it is my privilege to share the state of the city with you. I will highlight my 13th year in office, and I will share my goals and objectives for the city in 2023. I would like to recognize members of City Council in attendance, if you would please stand. Council has been very supportive of my administration, and I thank them for their support. I would also like to acknowledge my senior staff members, if you would please stand. I want to personally thank you for your dedication to the city. As I reflect on this past year, I realize how much we have accomplished. Through teamwork and perseverance, we have been able to move city offices, including the police operations, to the downtown while providing essential services without interruption. Our city's progress is a result of a collective effort on the part of not only the elected officials, city staff, but our community partners, our business leaders, and so many volunteers. So I want to say thank you to all of you who played a role in our work in Lebanon over these past years. Thank you. So my assessment of the state of the city is as follows. We recognize that we cannot succeed as a city unless we provide residents, visitors, and the business community with the best public safety services possible. Everyone deserves to live and work in a safe community. One division of public safety is the police department, and that is under the direction of Police Chief Brett Fisher. Police departments measure their crime rates by the number of serious or Part 1 crimes committed, which consists of two categories. The first is crimes against persons, like homicide, rape, robbery, and assault. 2022's count was virtually the same as 2021. The other is crimes against property, which include burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. As you can see, there was an increase from 2021, mainly due to thefts. 2021 was one of the lowest years for thefts, and 2022's count remains consistent with the past several years. We believe the increase last year was due to package delivery thefts. In 2021, Lebanon City experienced the lowest serious crime counts in our statistical history. 2022 was only slightly higher. When comparing to 20 years ago, serious crime has decreased by almost 59%. That is significant. The decrease has been a consistent trend over the years. Looking at homicides, there were 2, down from 3 in 2021. The first homicide was in retaliation for a shooting that occurred in 2021. The second homicide was a police incident where an officer was killed in the line of duty. On Thursday, March 31st of 2022, the Lebanon City Police Department was dispatched to the 1100 block of Forest Street for a burglary in progress. 5 members of LPD responded to the call. During their investigation, officers realized that they, as well as the homeowner, were familiar with the 34-year-old suspect inside. Officers eventually announced their presence and delivered verbal commands for the suspect to exit the residence through a rear door. The suspect was able to access a handgun and immediately opened fire on the officers, striking Lieutenant William Lebo, Officer Derek Underkoffler, and Officer Ryan Adams, as Officer Ryan's returned gunfire. Officer Christopher McCarrick engaged the suspect, resulting in an exchange of gunfire that ultimately neutralized the threat. Officer Adams, despite being injured, was able to radio for additional backup units. Officer McCarrick ensured Officer Underkoffler was taken to a place of safety. Officer Harner was able to gain entry into the residence and immediately began providing additional aid to Officer Underkoffler. Officer McCarrick returned to Lieutenant Lebo and began life-saving measures. Ultimately, this incident took the life of Lieutenant William Lebo and resulted in serious medical injuries to Officers Underkoffler and Adams. No matter how prepared you think you are, you cannot be for something of this magnitude. Our officers are still healing, and we thank them for their commitment to the city and to our community. The city started to track street crimes involving gunfire and random gunfire incidents in 2010. Street crime is where persons were injured by gunfire or where gunfire was involved in the commission of a crime. Random gunfire is where evidence of gunfire can be documented, but we are unable to establish whether there was criminal intent and there is no clear victim in the incident, like shooting into the air. In 2022, street crimes involving gunfire was 4 and random gunfire incidents were 9. With the exception of an increase in random shots fired in 2012, the number of incidents has been relatively consistent. However, during the first 3 months of 2023, the city has experienced multiple gun incidents, which has our numbers elevated. We believe some of these incidents are tied to 2 different groups of people, and in all instances, all victims were targeted. That is important because they are not random acts of violence on uninvolved people. These are people who resolve conflicts with guns. Gun violence impacts communities, and as I'm sure you've heard, other cities across our nation have experienced a stunning increase in serious gun violence. Fortunately, this is not the norm for Lebanon City. 36% of the assault incidents were domestic violence related compared to 45% in 2021. This is our lowest number in the last decade. Officers started to use a screening tool in 2018 that allows suspected domestic violence victims to be immediately connected with life-saving services. With the exception of 2020, where we believe the pandemic may have influenced the higher number of domestic assault cases, the number of domestic assaults has been steadily decreasing since the program's inception. Although this is encouraging, we believe we will need to continue to monitor the numbers for a longer period of time to ascertain its effectiveness. Part 2 crimes are forgery, embezzlement, vandalism, criminal mischief, sex offenses, DUI, drug abuse, disorderly conduct, and similar types of crimes. This type of crime, with 763 total counts, decreased by 5% from 2021. We continue to assess our interactions with our community members. We had 597 arrests in 22 compared to 817 in 2021. In 2022, there were 37 times during these arrest situations wherein we had to use force to make an arrest, detain a suspect, or to protect an officer or a third party. Reviewing the use of force reports, which includes the use of hands on a person, I think a reasonable person could determine from our statistics that the city typically uses the least amount of force necessary as per our use of force policy. Over the last 5 years, the number of complaints filed against an officer ranged between 0 and 3, with 1 in 2022. An internal investigation is conducted on every complaint. The complaint in 2022 was for the use of hands during an interaction and was declared unfounded. Some of the department's goals in 2023 are to: 1, we've already implemented, and that's Crime Watch, and that was implemented at the end of last month. This is a software program designed specifically to enhance transparency and community engagement. It links the police department, the media, private business, and the public by distributing sensitive criminal information that increases community awareness, expands offender accountability, and provides organized channels for the public to safely submit information. Other goals: develop, execute, and evaluate a retention and hiring strategy, implement a new report management system, implement e-citations, and in February, we enacted a schedule change to 12-hour shifts for the patrol division to help with quality of life issues. This division of public safety in 2022 fell under the responsibility of recently retired Fire Chief Dwayne Troutman and Deputy Chief Schweitzer. There were 1,500 calls for service in 2022, which is the highest number of calls in our history. This represents an increase of 100 more calls, or a 7% increase from 2021. The good news is that the increase was not due to fires, but rather false alarms, mutual aid to other municipalities, and aircraft landings. Over 40% of calls were for false alarms and 23% for hazardous conditions, like vehicle accident cleanup and aircraft standby. We experienced a total fire count of 110. This is 6 counts lower than 2021. Fires represent 7% of all calls. Fortunately, only 42 calls were structure fires, with 19 calls in the county and 23 calls in the city, or only 1.5% of all city calls for service. We also documented less cooking fires, with 8 compared to 17 and 21. Nationally, cooking fires are the #1 cause of house fires. House fires have become very expensive. Fire insurance carriers have expanded the scope of coverage to include replacing any porous surface, such as carpeting and ceiling tiles, due to lingering soot and products of combustion. The losses from structural fires totals $2.2 million versus almost $3 million in 2021. Last July 3rd, it is estimated that about $750,000 worth of damage was caused by an arson fire set to the former Lebanon Catholic High School, or Lebanon Catholic School. Responding fire department units were presented with flames leaping from the second-floor library area, producing a glow that could be seen in the downtown. The property had been purchased by private developers who did not carry insurance on the property. Weather was a factor in the size of a fire that began on the second floor of 630 Federal Street from an unattended candle. Due to wind, the fire spread to 3 other homes before being extinguished. A fire of electrical origin began in a ceiling void above a first-floor dining room. The fire caused $344,000 worth of damage to both homes located at 28 and 30 North 12th Street. The cause of the fire was a wiring junction between a dining room chandelier and the electrical conductor wiring at the ceiling level above a drop ceiling membrane. The junction was not in a rated enclosure, and fire spread the expected result. Electrical work should always follow the National Electrical Code. Responses outside the city increased by a whopping 46% when compared to 2021. Automatic aid to North Cornwall Township nearly doubled due to expansive growth on the Cornwall Road corridor. Responses outside the city has changed due to a dispatching change to placing city units on call several municipalities away when units do not respond within a certain time frame. County units out of service may cause a city unit to respond, but most of this change is a result of the volunteer fire service suffering from a lack of resources. 2023 goals are to finalize specifications for a new ladder truck and place the truck out on bid in partnership with the Rescue Hose Company. Finalize an amendment to the International Council of Codes specifically for the fire and property maintenance codes. Review the ordinance requirements for operational permits for welding and other hazardous work, and implement the use of new radio equipment purchased through a grant. Turning to property maintenance code enforcement, this division of the Public Safety Department is under the leadership of Glenn Llanos. Looking at food safety, in 2019, the department began a policy of increasing the frequency of inspections for establishments with non-compliant inspections. This was recommended by the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. The non-compliant facilities showed significant improvements in food safety practices and compliance. In 2022, there was only 1 eating establishment that failed 2 inspections in a row. Turning to property maintenance, the number of new cases in 22 was lower than in previous years. We believe this is due to the department primarily spending more time on ensuring property owners and property managers fix the root cause of the problem, so we spend less time on recurring violations. In regards to condemned properties, the city is taking a more assertive role. Prior to enforcement, all owners are provided an opportunity to develop and submit their own plan of action for restoring the structure. In almost all cases, the owners did not submit a plan. The city consistently has been around 110 condemned properties, which represents about 1% of the total housing units. This is low compared to other cities. In 2022, we issued 54 new condemnations, but we lifted 75. We ended the year at 99, which we believe was a first since we started tracking in 2008. Most condemnations are split evenly between interior conditions and utility shutoffs. Our goal is to reduce not only the number of condemned properties in the city, but also the length of time a property is listed as condemned. Our actions have caused quite a number of owners to either finally repair their dilapidated structures, or it has encouraged them into selling the property to owners who are willing to make the necessary corrections. At this time, I want to publicly acknowledge an investor who not only performs exceptional work, but also stages the home like you would see on $1 Million Listing. And we want to thank Kyle Wenger for investing in the city. And we're going to show you a couple slides. I also want to give a shout out to Noah Starry with Star War Properties and the great work he is doing as well. Regarding the Public Works category, this department consists of engineering, highway, traffic control, parks, public property, and recycling, overseen by Director Robin Getz. The highest number of work hours in this department was directed to street sweeping. Less hours than normal were spent on cutting over 400 acres of grass because of a lack of seasonal workers. Regarding winter maintenance, according to NOAA, the average seasonal snowfall in Lebanon County is 21.5 inches. In the last 20 years, the most snow in a winter season was 52.5. Last 21-22 season, we experienced almost 17 inches. This season, we reached a little more than 5 inches. This is the lowest amount during this 20-year period of time. Thank goodness. More than $8.2 million has been invested in the resurfacing of city streets over the last 15 years. This chart represents only paving. As you can determine, there were a couple of years where there was a lesser amount going into actual resurfacing, and that is when we had to direct money to either engineering for the Norfolk Southern Bridge project or for engineering for the 422-72 resurfacing project. In 2022, the resurfacing of 10th Street, a portion of Bayshore Drive, Lehman Street, and Walton Street from 7th Street to Lincoln Avenue were completed. Over the next 2 years, the city proposes to invest an additional $9 million into resurfacing of streets. We believe this outlay will have a positive impact on the streets located in the city. One project in particular is Phase 3 of the 422-72 resurfacing project. This encompasses 9th Street from Route 241 north to Maple Street. The prepping will start in June of this year with project completion in October. Also, there will be quite a number of stormwater improvement projects occurring in 2023. 5th and Cumberland, 6th and Cumberland, 4th and Lehman, and the end of Peach near 4th Street. Along with all of these projects comes utility work and other prep work, which cause inconveniences to motorists, residents, and businesses. We ask for your patience as we make these improvements for the betterment of the traveling public. 3 permits were issued to the school district for projects that started in 2022, which increased the value of construction occurring in the city. The total value of all commercial building permits in the city was $55.8 million, and the residential value was $4.6 million, for a total of $60.4 million worth of building construction. Looking to the balance of this year, our goals are to complete quite an extensive list of streets for resurfacing, start 3 major stormwater projects, install equipment to resynchronize the downtown signals, and additionally, after 37 years in municipal government, Robin will be retiring in November, and we just hired her replacement so that we will have an adequate amount of training for a position of this magnitude. So Robin, thank you for your service. She looks so happy there. Turning to administration, oversight of human resources, payroll, recreation, community and economic development, and other administrative duties falls under the direction of Melissa Canones. Concerning recreation, volunteer park rangers continue to assist with patrolling Stavers Dam Park in 2022. Stavers Lake gets stocked with trout by the Fish and Boat Commission in March and November. Opening day for trout still has not seen pre-COVID participation levels, but I can share with you that there are some big trout in the lake, and that is not a fishtail. Well, this one is a bass, but he's my son, so I had to throw that picture in. But that is at Stavers. So there's big bass in there too. Not too many folks are aware that we rent camping spaces. Typically, we see an increase in camping the night before the big opening day of trout. Students participating in nature camp increased again for a total of 23 children. And moving on to licensing and permits. This type of license is issued for pool tables, jukeboxes, arcade, and skill games. More gas stations and restaurants installed skill games in their establishments. Recent court rulings have determined that skill games are not considered gambling and thus are legally allowed as an accessory use to business establishments. A total of 78 permits were issued to various groups for the use of streets, sidewalks, and parks, compared to 69 permits in the year prior. We still have not returned to pre-COVID numbers, which ranged in the 90s. Public events included a pro-life rally, parades, sports leagues, an art exhibit, Chris Kindle Market, Pride event, a food truck palooza, car and motorcycle show, music festival, tree lighting, carriage rides, and the New Year's Eve Bologna drop. As cyber attacks become more common and sophisticated, the city upgraded additional software platforms to enhance our cybersecurity protection. The safety manual was finalized by the Safety Committee in 2022. Several job descriptions were updated, and we will continue with updating other positions in 2023, as well as finalize an update to the Employee Policy Manual, which was created in 1994. Turning to community and economic development, this division of the administration department falls under the leadership of Janelle Mendoff, the city's Community and Economic Development Administrator. Janelle oversees our grant monies, community and economic development projects. Regarding community development, the city utilizes its community development block grant monies for personnel costs associated with the code enforcement program, in addition to paying for a portion of police officer salaries for time spent in the Northwest and downtown areas. Additionally, CDBG money was provided to the Union Fire Company to assist with the purchase of a fire engine, and funding was used for street improvements and emergency rehab assistance to 3 homeowners. The Chestnut Street Community Center established a permanent site for the Fresh Start homeless shelter. Prior to COVID, 12 local churches took turns housing and manning the roaming shelter. The city designated $200,000 towards the installation of an elevator for the permanent homeless shelter. The city was able to start a full rehab project in 2022 on North 9th Street and assisted 2 new homeowners with down payments through the first-time home buyer program with home funding. 1 home was owned and rehabbed by the City of Lebanon Land Bank and sold for owner occupancy. 21 ARPA awards were provided to nonprofits to financially assist with projects for mental health, persons with disabilities, healthy childhood environments, affordable emergency and/or gap housing for the homeless, and student support services. Turning to playgrounds, parks, and healthy initiatives. In 2022, REACH, a national program administered by the CDC to reduce racial and ethnic health disparities, provided the city with a $20,000 grant to complete a feasibility study to connect the 8th Street Rail Trailhead to the Veterans Memorial Walkway located along the Quiddy Channel, and ultimately this walkway to the John E. Wangert Memorial Park to be located along Chestnut Street. The study recommended some improvements for pedestrian and bike safety. The next step will be to acquire funding for these improvements. Moving to Coleman Memorial Park. The pool demolition project was completed in March of last year by removing construction rubble and grading the area. The city is considering what recreational use will replace the pool. One consideration may be a dog park. Additionally, the city continues to work on connecting Coleman Memorial Park to the Union Canal Tunnel Park and then ultimately to the Lebanon Valley Rail Trail via a connector trail. This project will provide a regional connection between two historic parks in our county. The city received a grant from REACH to design and assist with the construction of this connector. The goal is to start this project in 2023. The Susquehanna Area Mountain Bike Association, or SAMBA, constructed a new mountain bike trail in the park in 2022. The trail circles the perimeter of the park. The City Park Board of Trustees, Lebanon Bicycle Recycle, the Community Health Council, and SAMBA celebrated the dedication of the trail with a race on the new trail. Additional improvements included the renovation of 4 pavilions and the removal of the miniature golf course. The board is fundraising to install a premier disc golf course in the park, which will hopefully be constructed this year. Lastly, the city hired a consultant to update the master site plan to include all of the improvements made to the park since the initial plan was completed in 2011. The city continued our partnership with the Lebanon Valley Conservancy and utilized REACH funding to formulate construction drawings for Liberty Trail Park. The park is a proposed green infrastructure project in the downtown. It's actually right on the other side of this building. This project should be let in the fall of this year. The city also received a $100,000 multimodal transportation grant from DCED to assist with the cost to improve the downtown streetscape from 4th to 12th Streets on Cumberland Street at an estimated cost of over $4 million. In 2022, we completed the design work and held a community stakeholder meeting. This project will replace the curbing, sidewalks, trees, tree grates, and other incidentals. This project will commence in a couple weeks. Turning to economic development projects. The city is following a strategic plan to foster economic development in the city. One of our most exciting and challenging action steps was to locate city offices downtown to assist with revitalizing the urban core. Renovation of the Hack facility started in June of 2021, and the official move of city operations occurred in May of 2022. This project was a huge undertaking with both exterior and interior improvements, including a 10-bay police garage addition. The project involved an incredible amount of time and effort while still performing all of our daily job tasks. We are especially proud that taxes did not need to be raised in order to accomplish this significant feat. Moving city operations to the former Hack facility increased the amount of workspace available to each department and, more importantly, greatly improved employees' working conditions, especially for our police officers. We have increased pedestrian foot traffic and police presence in the downtown. Locating next to the bus transfer station provided more accessibility to our residents. We will continue to look for funding sources to construct a public parking garage, In the meantime, though, the city did construct an employee parking lot located a block away. All in all, including acquisition, total City Hall project costs totaled $4.85 million. Other economic development highlights of 2022 are, as mentioned previously, we noticed more interest in renovation of residential properties. However, investment in commercial ventures continues as well. Some of the larger commercial or institutional projects started in 2022 include the district's new middle school project valued at $50.2 million and is being constructed on the former track and field site at the high school complex, renovation of the kitchen and cafeteria at the existing middle school, WellSpan renovated their CT scan center. The Elm Street Mennonite Church constructed an addition onto their building. The school district renovated the industrial arts area in the high school. Fulton Bank performed an HVAC and electrical upgrade. First National Bank renovated the entrance and updated ADA accessibility to the bank. Monarch Development finished building out the shell erected the prior year for an urgent care facility. Rite Aid renovated the pharmacy. And although COVID held their plans to restore a former brewery to its prior glory at 7th and Miller Streets, Lebanon Valley Craft Brewery is now open. The brewery has been out of operation since 1959, and the new owners had a lot of work to do, both with brewing and renovation. Economic development will continue to be a priority in 2023. So let's move to finance. How did city government fare financially? The finance officer, Helen Westfall, and I oversee all financial matters. Thankfully, my administration has addressed the significant deficits that the city was experiencing before I took office in 2010. Over this same period of time, we improved our cash flow management. Since 2010, we had to issue tax and revenue anticipation notes to make certain that our cash flow was adequate until property tax revenue would come in. In 2022, we did not need to issue this short-term borrowing because of our increased carryover amount. That is the first year since I've been mayor. We did take on debt of $2.33 million to help finalize the City Hall project by using 30-year general obligation bonds. It was determined during the bond issuance process that our bond rating was A-, the highest rating out of any of the third-class cities, the highest rating. Our debt service is now at 14.8% of our revenues. Our long-term liabilities increased due to other post-employment benefits. We continue to negotiate this item with the unions because this liability is significant. Currently, we utilize a pay-as-you-go approach, appropriating resources each year as payments come due, or rather as people retire and use the benefits, instead of accumulating assets in advance. According to our last actuarial valuation, together all pension plans sponsored by the city are not distressed. Capital assets increased due to the addition of major street improvements and the acquisition of City Hall. We can proudly report that we have not had to raise taxes for 8 straight years. When comparing Lebanon City to 14 other third-class cities in our region who did not raise real estate taxes in the last 8 years, Lebanon had the lowest real estate tax rate. Out of all third-class cities in our state, Lebanon had the second lowest real estate tax rate. Scranton City is the lowest, but their earned income tax rate is higher. So we can be proud of our efforts to keep real estate taxes low while still completing major projects and providing appropriate services to our residents. So that summarizes some of our department's progress and goals. Let's turn to our residents and businesses for a few items. The pandemic hurt Lebanon City residents and businesses. Of that, there is no doubt. The unemployment rate hit a record high of 17.8% in April of 2020. However, the unemployment rate has consistently fallen since that peak until this past summer, when it rose for a couple of months, only to decrease again until ending the 2020 year preliminarily at a record-setting low of 3.3%. In comparison, the county ended at 2.6%. Now, usually, low unemployment rates means an economy is strong. However, it could be due to a low labor participation rate, which could be a concerning sign for the economy moving forward. This is a matter that should be noted. We know that our local businesses need employees. City government is feeling it too. The median household income increased slightly to over $42,000, but that amount is significantly lower than the county and state. Our percentage of persons in poverty rose slightly higher this past year. The significant increases in groceries, housing, heating fuel, gasoline, interest rates, they have negatively impacted our residents and our businesses. We noticed an increase in small businesses closing or selling in 2022. Between the changes in post-COVID consumer habits, COVID supplemental money at an end, lack of full economic recovery, increases in operating expenses, and the most impactful, the staffing shortages, some businesses have found it too difficult to continue operations. We are especially seeing this in our downtown. Our downtown is the core of the county, and our last marketing strategy was implemented in 2010. Therefore, the city is putting out an RFP for a consultant to start an open discussion about the challenges everyone is experiencing. One company we initially contacted has indicated that the efforts we have taken to move City Hall to the downtown core, the facade improvement program implemented through Lebanon Foundation, and the upcoming streetscape project are great first steps. We hope to uncover and define the economic potential, set the foundation for growth, and create an exciting destination for tourists and local visitors alike. I do want to add that we should not count those mom and pops out. Lebanonians have a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and we are seeing some small businesses change their model and or change the services they're offering to meet unfilled and or unique needs. The city is partnering with the Community Health Council and the county to perform a much-needed housing survey. But we can share that over the last several years, the city has focused additional efforts on providing assistance to increase owner-occupied housing. And the latest numbers show that the number of owner-occupied housing units increased from about 40 to over 44%. This is a definite move in the right direction. During my tenure, my administration has acquired over $75 million in grants to improve police, fire, and public works operations, enhance parks, make environmental improvements, and foster economic development. In 2022 alone, we received over $9 million. Not including any city projects, more than $215 million has been invested in construction and improvement projects since 2010. 2022 was a big year due to the $50 million middle school project. These investments are fundamental to Lebanon's quality of life. Serious crime has decreased in Lebanon, and we are lower than most other cities in our region. Lebanon is safe. So we have improved the cash flow, eliminated deficits, received an A- bond rating, have appropriately funded pension plans, low taxes, continued investment in buildings and infrastructure, increased our capital assets, increased owner-occupied housing, lowered the number of condemned properties to help reduce blight, reduced serious crime, and have lower crime reported than in other cities. So with that being said, I am pleased to report that the state of the city is optimistically strong and promising. Looking back 13 years, we have made a positive impact on the health of our city in many areas. We work for you and will continue to do so in 2023. It is a privilege to serve all of you as your mayor, and I ask for your continued commitment to our local businesses and residents as well, because Lebanon is a great place to grow your business, grow your education, grow your family, and grow your community. Lebanon, the place to grow. Thank you, and God bless Lebanon City. Thank you for coming. Anyone have any questions?